Hello and welcome to Stuff Every Queer Kid Should Know. I'm Max Emerson, a writer and performer leveraging social media to create independent narratives. Similar to my other endeavors, this podcast is designed to provide vital resources, role models, and tools that enhance your well-being, foster connections, and support personal growth from late adolescence onwards. Welcome back to another episode. Today's guest is Braden Summers, here to speak on capturing queer relationships in photography. Braden is a very busy commercial photographer known for his visually striking and cinematic compositions that blend high fashion aesthetics with social storytelling. His work explores themes of beauty, diversity, and inclusivity, particularly through his All Love is Equal series, which reimagines classic romantic imagery with LGBTQ plus couples. With a portfolio spanning fashion, portraits, and tourism photography, Summers creates polished, emotive narratives that resonate with luxury brands and publications while promoting greater representation in visual narratives. Braden, thank you so much for coming on this show. I'm very honored.
My pleasure.
I have prepared a series of rapid-fire questions for my audience to get to know you better in a series called Who the Hell Are You?
Okay.
Ready?
Bring it on.
Name?
Braden Summers.
Zodiac sign?
Scorpio.
What are you an expert in?
I'm a photographer and director.
How do you identify on the gender and sexuality spectrum?
Male and gay.
What's your favorite animal?
Orangutan.
Least favorite animal?
Rodents.
All. Last thing you ate?
Protein shake.
What is your caffeinated beverage of choice?
An oat milk latte.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Littering.
Dream vacation destination?
The Amanjiri Hotel in Utah.
Ooh, it's got goosebumps. What is your favorite sport or game?
Does yoga count?
Yeah, that totally counts.
Sure.
Yoga's sport-ish.
Yeah.
It has like a game on Nintendo Switch, so like
Well,
it counts.
it's practice.
If bowling's a sport, yoga's a sport. What is your favorite thing about queer bars?
Well, I live in the woods in Topanga with my kids, so eye candy is my favorite thing about gay bars.
You miss it?
Yeah, a little bit.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a virtual hellscape and 10 being a glorious utopia, what are things looking like for queer people in America right now?
I'll say a 7.
7, not too bad, considering. What was the last item you misplaced?
My phone.
Where was it?
The bottom of a hotel pool.
What was the last thing you were mad about?
The 2024 election results.
What was the last thing that made you cry?
My ayahuasca ceremony.
To cleanse from the election?
No, it was shortly before.
What is the location of the worst date you've ever had?
West Hollywood.
Checks out. And what is your most prized possession?
Painting by Hilda Palafox.
Wow. I hope that you can send us a picture of that painting so we can show it on screen. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, happy to.
Hey there, listeners. If you're looking to boost your vitality and support your reproductive health, we've got something special for you. Let's talk about Shilajit, a powerful natural supplement that's been used for centuries in traditional Ayurvedic medicine. Recent studies show that Shilajit not only increases testosterone levels, but also significantly improves sperm quality and quantity. We're talking better sperm count, enhanced motility, and healthier morphology, all key factors for the male parts. But not all Shilajit is created equal. That's why we recommend Black Lotus Shilajit. Sourced from the pristine Altai Mountains, Black Lotus Shilajit is pure, potent, and packed with fulvic acid and essential minerals. Unlike other brands, Black Lotus undergoes rigorous purification processes to ensure you're getting the highest quality product on the market. So if you're serious about optimizing your masculine parts, Black Lotus Shilajit is your go-to supplement. Boost your energy, enhance your fertility, and feel your best naturally. My favorite product of theirs is the tincture. I leave it under my tongue for like 15 seconds and go. Try it today. Head over to blacklotusshilajit.com and use code MAX for 15% off your order. That's blacklotusshilajit.com, code MAX, because you deserve the best. Ever wonder how your daily habits like your meals, sleep, or stress impact your health? NutriSense offers a way to take the guesswork out of the wellness journey. For many people, managing health can feel like a shot in the dark. They're trying different diets, workouts, and routines, but without the right information, it's hard to know what's truly working. That is where NutriSense comes in. NutriSense isn't just another health trend. It's a comprehensive program that pairs real-time data from a continuous glucose monitor with one-on-one personalized coaching from expert nutritionists. This combination helps users understand how their bodies respond to food, exercise, sleep, and stress, giving them the insights they need to make informed decisions about their health. What sets NutriSense apart is its unique approach to personalized health. While other programs might offer generic advice, NutriSense tailors its advice based on your unique data. With the support of a board-certified nutritionist, users can receive customized recommendations that align with their specific health goals, making it easier to achieve lasting results. If you're ready to take control of your health, visit nutrisense.io/maxemerson to get $50 off your first month. That is nutrisense.io/maxemerson. Or you can click on the link in the notes and use my special code, MaxEmerson, for an exclusive $50 discount. Take the first step towards better health with NutriSense today. So you grew up in a small town in Connecticut and then moved to San Francisco. That was a huge shift. How did that transition influence your creative vision as an artist?
Well, I mean, my creative vision is so much inspired by exploring themes of diversity and beauty and diversity. And where I grew up, it was incredibly homogenous, very white, small town, relatively affluent there. And then I spent a year at Boston University before transferring to the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, where I was exposed to an enormous amount of diversity and queer culture was abundant. And, you know, I think just feeling like such a minority in Connecticut as an out gay kid, and then, you know, being the only one that I knew of in my high school, and then being in a city like San Francisco where it was everywhere and minorities were everywhere and my friends were all minorities, it just broadened my horizons in terms of, you know, what beauty can look like, what diversity is like, and ultimately growing my acceptance and tolerance of different people. And I think, you know, I want that reflected in my work.
So it's almost like just life is so much better with a diversity of perspectives and cultures in your life that you're kind of trying to share that in some way, at least with the world in whatever medium you can.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I felt very othered in the small town and I just never felt like I belonged. And then once I was in a city where the majority of people I was interacting with were also minorities of all different types, you no longer feel less alone because there's this commonality between everyone. And, you know, you can see the shared humanity in other people.
Okay. It's interesting that your time through education, you're talking more about your personal experiences. I'm curious as to what you actually learned in school beyond, like in a more technical capacity that you've brought into your work and has influenced your career. Because I think a lot of people who want to be in photography don't know if they should go to school or not for it, or if they should self-teach, or if they should go to university, or like what road to take. Can you kind of describe your educational journey and how that was a fit for you and if you do anything differently today?
Sure. I mean, I personally had a really great experience in college. I think there was so much about the technical aspects of photography, from editing to lighting to just like, you know, we started in film and transitioned while I was in college into digital, and just learning about different digital cameras, different lenses.
You were that cusp where you had to throw out the first year of your education.
Well, you know, it was valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially the first year was a lot about film. And then, you know, there's so much about being an artist that, you know, it is not just about the kind of work you're creating. It's also about the business of being an artist. How can you make money? And there was a big focus on that at university. And I was really grateful for that. So I had an understanding of kind of like what to look out for when I left college and, you know, what opportunities might be available to me once I was out of college.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of artists live almost a double life, is that they do the thing that gives them joy and brings them their truth, whatever it is that drives them to do it in the first place. And then there's the stuff they do for money. And it seems like you've done this beautiful job of integrating the two, that you can be super passionate and super proud of the work that is, although technically commercial and paid, just as rewarding, I imagine, as the novel I spent 2 years writing that maybe 1,000 people will read.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is I have also had to supplement my artistic endeavors with other investments as I've gotten older. You know, it still is a really difficult industry, saturated with lots of other photographers. And, you know, so I would be lying if I said all of my income came from my artistry.
Okay. A big piece of advice I got in college was that when you're making money, save it. And of course, invest it and build it into something else, because you just, in anything, I don't think that you want to be completely dependent on your labor to make money. After a while, that's exhausting. At some point, you're going to want to slow down. Like, you don't have the same energy levels that you do in your 30s as you will when you're in your late 40s. So hopefully you'll have built some kind of mechanism for some passive income. I think that's really important for people wanting to get into the arts, is that otherwise you get burnt out.
I think almost any field you're in, it's valuable to have multiple income streams. So if you can expand yourself and not rely on one thing, there's less pressure on that one thing.
Yeah, it's not one of those careers where you just like burn yourself out for 20 years and then you get your pension.
Right.
You have to build your own pension here. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to take a moment and thank everybody on my Patreon page. Just kidding. Let's talk about your artistic vision a little bit more and the inspiration for that. Your work beautifully blends high fashion aesthetics with powerful social storytelling. How do you approach the balance between artistic expression and the messages you want to convey?
Yeah. I think I view myself as a filter like any other artist, where we take in life's experiences, and, the quality of work that I spit out is through my brain, myself as a filter. And what I'm interested in as an artist is usually beautiful, aspirational imagery. And I think any kind of messaging that I want to fuse into my work is gonna be blended with something that is, meant to look like it could be a high fashion campaign or, a beauty campaign, because that's just what I personally am interested in. And, we all know in advertising, there's real power in beauty. Whether or not we agree with the beauty standards that are set in advertising, beauty sells, right? So it's like when you think about a product that you're trying to sell, you want to show it in the best light. And, if there's a message that I'm trying to get across to my audience, I personally want to show it in the best light. And
I think you do a beautiful job of capturing more than just superficial beauty that I think people generally associate with commercial campaigns. Is just like, oh yes, flawless skin, people that are tall and skinny, or whatever it is that is like the criticism. I think the thing that you've really captured for me is that the moment you've created is beautiful. Like the story that is behind each image has something that's so much deeper than that, but it is still that beauty that sells. And I think you've tapped into that really well.
Thank you.
Did it take you a long time to kind of find this voice? Was there a long experimental period?
Sure.
What's the weirdest strong but wrong choice you've made as a photographer?
Ooh, strong but wrong. I think the strong but wrong choice is, I graduated from college. I had this certain portfolio, and I'd moved to New York City and work. I graduated in 2008, right when the economy crashed. So work was not flowing. And even trying to get internships at that time, a lot of photographers kept their crew really small and weren't interested in expanding. So, at some point I kind of took a step back and realized my true passion at the time was trying to get like tourism campaigns or hotel work. And so I spent a lot of time trying to create images that would help get me that type of work. And, as a gay man, I was focusing all my energy on creating straight content. And, not
because you're catering specifically to what you thought they wanted.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so not that it was wrong necessarily, but I just completely avoided the kind of love that I was engaged with in, for myself and my own romance. And so, just kind of taking a step back and bringing awareness to be like, oh, maybe I should focus on some gay content. And that was actually something I was challenged to do by my husband, then boyfriend.
He was your boyfriend, then husband now? You didn't downgrade him? Okay.
Right, correct. Yeah.
Just making sure. You never know. We're nonlinear people. I think you touched on something really important that I think people of different ages than you and I should maybe... I think people our age, the millennials, get criticized, made fun of a lot, whatever you want to call it, by the younger generation in particular, the Gen Zs and Alphas, for like trying too hard, for being too polished, for over-delivering and gold-plating with our clients, because we grew up meaning graduated from college, entered the job market during one of the most challenging economic times ever. You had to claw your way into any work you could get. Like I had some rough years right after college. It was slow. And as an entire generation, we're made fun of as being the tryhards, the perfectly postured LinkedIn people. And
No, I spent 2 years in New York City working I worked for the Museum of Modern Art, which sounds glorious, but I worked in a basement it was a closet really, and they turned that into the photo studio, and I was just photographing the products that
In a cave?
Yeah, it was a cave. And as someone
Happily,
who
because you
needs
had a job.
daylight, it was like I was constantly falling asleep at my job because there was no one overseeing my work, but I was photographing the products for the MoMA retail stores.
Wow.
And pay the bills, but it was not glorious by any means, and it wasn't the dream job.
It is one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from working with younger people is that I can keep things simpler. I can trust that I am enough, and how important it is to just take care of myself while working and not just like run myself ragged. But, everything has a balance, because I've definitely worked with younger people where I'm like, hey man, like, let's not be more than a half an hour late.
Yeah.
If you're like me, you want to fuel your body with the best possible ingredients, whether you're working out, staying active, or just looking to maintain a healthy lifestyle. That's why I'm excited to share with you Peori's Whey Protein. It's not just any protein powder, it's a game changer. Peori's Whey Protein is sourced from grass-fed cows, ensuring that you're getting a clean, pure, and high-quality protein. What sets this protein powder apart is its simplicity and commitment to quality. There are no artificial sweeteners, fillers, or unnecessary additives, just pure protein goodness with a delicious natural bourbon vanilla flavor. Plus, it's sweetened with organic coconut sugar, so it tastes amazing without all the junk. Whether you're mixing it into your morning smoothies or shaking it up post-workout, Peori Protein Powder delivers 21 grams of protein per serving, helping to support muscle recovery, energy levels, and overall wellness. And for those of us who care about where our food comes from, it's great to know that Peori's Whey is certified by the Clean Label Project, ensuring it's free from harmful contaminants like heavy metals and pesticides. Ready to elevate your protein game? Head over to Peori.com and use my promo code MaxEmerson. That's Peori.com/MaxEmerson. Don't mess out. Head to Peori.com/MaxEmerson and use promo code MaxEmerson today. I want to move on and talk about All Love is Equal and some of your other campaigns. I have your questions more specifically written out because I want to make sure I get everything right, because I feel like what you do is such a specific thing. So in All Love is Equal, you reimagine classic romantic imagery by including LGBT couples. What inspired you to create this series, and how did the reactions from viewers shape your work moving forward?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I was living in Paris when my boyfriend had challenged me to create a gay image that was in line with the work that I was trying to build for my portfolio. And so I was like, oh, I like that challenge. Why hadn't I thought of that myself? I was kind of mad at myself that it wasn't my idea to begin with. Anyway.
Noticing a pattern.
Yeah. But, I think I had a trip to London coming up to visit a friend. And so I thought maybe I'll try to create an image while I'm there. And so, in my head, I was trying to think, what would an iconic image of romance be in London? And for me, it was a rainy day. It was two people holding hands, maybe in the London Bridge. It was traditional garb, as if they were going to see, a play in London at night or something.
Okay.
And go to London, and, it's known for being rainy a lot. And of course, it was a beautiful sunny day when I was there.
The worst.
Canceled the shoot. Just wasn't worth doing. I think maybe a month later, I tried again. Of course, it was sunny the whole weekend I was there. And on my third attempt, I went to London, and luckily the weather cooperated. I had two models. And I just kind of did this like really quick shoot on the bridge. I didn't block anyone off. It was just like I had these two models who were down to participate, and
it's kind of test shoot style.
Yeah, basically. And the resulting image is this one you see here. And when I shared that image, it just on social media, it just received a very different response than I'd ever received from any of my other work. I think it was shared a lot more. It didn't go viral by any stretch of the imagination. But it just received this really genuine response from my following at the time. And, it wasn't until maybe 6 months later that after I had moved back to the US and my boyfriend and I had broken up, which is my husband.
Still then husband, okay.
Yeah, we took a 2-year break.
Great.
But I moved to San Francisco and I kind of felt a little bit lost in terms of what my next steps would be. I was living in my sister's apartment and I kept going back to that one image and I thought, what was it about that was so moving to people? And could I continue that as a series? And so I dreamt up this idea that I would create these iconic images of romance in different cultures around the world. I pitched it to my best friend. He is one of the top producers in the world. Luckily, he was on break. He was switching jobs. He was producing for Mario Testino for a couple of years, and then he was about to work for Matt and Marcus Bigot. These are all pretty well-known fashion photographers. And I caught him at a time that summer where he was out of work, and so he said, "Yeah, I love the idea, and let's go for it." And so I flew to Paris where he was living, and we spent 2 weeks in pre-production, and then we just created a plan of where to go. And it was important for me to showcase cultures where it was, both easy to show same-sex love on the streets, like it had been for me in Paris and in New York.
You're not going to get murdered for doing this shoot somewhere.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that could happen anywhere, right? But where you're less likely to get murdered. And
at least where there's some law saying that you can't.
Yeah, right, sure, yeah. And then I also wanted to go to places where it was very dangerous to show that kind of love. And so, whether or not the images were quote unquote authentic, I wanted them to show a sense of, ease regardless of what the laws were there or the cultural norms were.
Interesting.
These kind of aspirational images of something for cultures to
work towards.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. You crowdsourced this part of it, correct?
I did, yeah. So based on my producer's availability, I didn't have the time to crowdsource in advance. So I shot the series, funded it with my own money. I just believed in it so much that it was worth the risk. And then
you've got some images to use for the crowdsourcing though. It's actually very smart.
Yeah, I think I only had a couple of images that I showcased. And, I presented the crowdsourcing video as if it was something that I was going to do. And I think I just spent a month trying to raise the money, and I pitched it to The Advocate, and luckily they had presented the concept on their website, and
it boosted you?
That boosted me a lot. And
nice.
BuzzFeed, I think BuzzFeed also presented. I'm not sure actually. I don't remember if they put the initial Kickstarter campaign on their website, but they had gotten a hold of it somehow. So both The Advocate and BuzzFeed reached out to me after I had fully funded the crowdsourcing and said, hey, I would love to showcase the series when it's finished. And I said, why don't we do a Valentine's Day story? And they both agreed to do it. And so Valentine's Day 2014, the series launched and just had this really incredible viral life.
Amazing. I think that's probably where I first found you. And that's about when we became friends. It was a little bit later.
Yeah. Well, you were part of the, I photographed you for the series.
But you were already putting stuff out there at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, where can I fit into this?
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about crowdsourcing because I think of this show as catered towards 16-year-old Max and making his life easier moving forward. And I do not ever want Max to think that crowdsourcing is easy.
It's not.
We need to manage the expectations here. How much unintended or how much work was it? Did you think it would be going into it? And then how much work was it after the fact?
I don't know that I had expectations of how much work it would be, but I just remember being a full-time job for the 30 days that the campaign was live, and just being, really nervous if I could make the money because I'd already invested it. So if I didn't make the money back, it would just have been a loss. And it's just a lot of cold calls, which feels awful because when I'm the recipient of a cold call, the first thing I want to do is either just hang up or tell them off or, block them completely. So it just was something that's not natural to me. I'm not a salesy type of guy. So writing all these emails and direct phone calls wasn't comfortable.
I think of this weirdly as like a small town, large city, left and right kind of thing. But my version of it is like my friends that stayed home and are like very kind of conservative politically people now, that's the pool of people I'll get people hitting me up trying to get in on their multi-level marketing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my liberal friends who live in larger cities, I'll get similar hits up from like, hey buddy, how you been? It's like, oh, it's been 3 years. What do you need?
Yeah.
So I'm doing a Kickstarter.
Yeah. I mean, I've not done a Kickstarter since, even though I've been tempted. It's just, yeah, it was really draining for me.
Yeah.
But
what was the most difficult part that you hadn't realized was going to even be part of that process?
Maybe making the videos like in preparation for the Kickstarter to go live. Like, all right, here's me and my face. This is not something that I'm necessarily comfortable with being on camera, or had much experience with, and really trying to sell the idea.
Yeah, because you're not a front of camera person. That's not your jam.
No,
so
but here I am. So every once in a while, if the situation calls for it, I'm open to it. But just really presenting the concept, and luckily I think I'd really spent a lot of time thinking about how important it was for me to create that series, and that I was really filling a void in commercial imagery or mainstream imagery, I just really believed in it. So that part made it easier.
Getting the magazine support's also really helpful too, just because they have kind of this built-in audience that wants to support these sorts of stories. And I would say one of the main advantages that you have with this is just the images are so striking and they say so much in them that you don't have to do much. Like the idea is really good. It sells itself in some ways. I don't mean to like say you had it easy with your crowdsourcing campaign, but I found that in my first ones, I was doing too much. Like I was trying to do anything I could to trigger press attention, to get them to share it, essentially do the journalist job for them and give them a funny headline.
Mm-hmm.
Like I fake dated Kyle Krieger for a month.
Oh, wow.
And then we broke up, and the web series, there's like a disclaimer. It was a web series,
Actually, I think I remember
the two-parter of us breaking up and having to fight over who kept our joint Instacouple account. And then Willem and Bianca bust down the door and they like tell us how to settle it. But the disclaimer on the web series was, this is all in service of a fundraiser. And like I was just doing everything I possibly could that had nothing to do with the project itself, just to be like, hey, over here, look at this.
Yeah. You're a maximalist.
Yeah, it's fun to compare like us having such similar roads. You get it? and almost arriving at the same place in a lot of ways, but just going like fully in opposite directions to like start and end in almost the same place.
Yeah, it wasn't obvious to me going into Kickstarter that it would ultimately be, a publication like The Advocate that would bring the campaign so much publicity. It seemed obvious now in hindsight that would have been like, oh, I should have only focused on publications to try to bring awareness. But I think I just I don't know, my background in fundraising was, selling candy bars in high school for random nonprofits.
So you had to do basically a crash course in not just on-camera hosting, but PR, also client management, because let's be real, everyone donating to these Kickstarters wants something, and it's you. They want you. They want your attention, and that's great, but there's only so many hours that you have in a day. You have not done a Kickstarter since then, though.
No.
I want to talk about something we were touching on earlier with working with models, especially in this test shoot capacity. It sounded like a lot of them were not actually in relationships with each other. So you're just casting models for this. Mm-hmm. How were you able to find the moments of intimacy and all of this truth with two models that don't know each other?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, because I think the most amount of backlash I got for the series was, how dare you focus so much on beauty? Why did you not use real couples? And for me, there's so many reasons. At the time,
access was very different at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I first and foremost, I did reach out to LGBTQ organizations in every place that I went to, and a lot of them were like, hey, we know some couples, but they're not going to be comfortable on camera. They're not out to their families. Like, sorry, no. And then there are organizations that said, hey, I don't really understand what you're doing. Why are you focusing on so much on beauty? Like, we in the community that, where we live, we don't really care so much about beauty. Like there's disability in our community. There's people who don't view themselves as so beautiful. Why should I help you when, I don't really believe in what you're doing? I think they missed the point. really the real purpose of
That was a big
the campaign.
conversation at the time. It was kind of like at the end of the Abercrombie wave where it's like, hey, we can use real people in our campaigns and stuff too. But also with social media now, I feel like there are so many more people comfortable in front of the camera. So your talent pool has massively widened now because people are just much more themselves on camera, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and this was 2013. This idea of being really authentic wasn't as mainstream. And so, I think the reason I approached the campaign the way that I did was, I was approaching it from an advertising perspective. That was what I studied. That's what I knew. Those were the aspirations I had, with my own work to try to get more into advertising, and specifically like luxury tourism and shooting for hotels and shooting.
Just putting queer people on camera was already the most you could do. I get it.
Well, looking at those campaigns that I was trying to get for myself as an artist, those models for the straight couples that are presented, they're not real. Like, and the majority of the work you see today is not real. And there was this incredible expectation that because I was showing gay couples that they should be authentic, which I didn't really anticipate that backlash.
Were the models queer?
Not always.
Okay.
I mean, whenever I could get them to be part of the community, I would. Johannesburg was part of my traveling for that campaign, specifically because I found this incredible couple who got married in a traditional Zulu wedding. And it was the first of its kind. And I reached out to them every way possible, no response. And I think I finally reached out to them on like Twitter, which, now is X. And that was the only way I got a response from them. And they said, yes, let's do it. So then I made sure Johannesburg was part of the...
So it was a priority.
It was a priority.
You were already pushing in that direction, but it wasn't until probably 5 years later that the rest of the industry started coming around to it and the talent was making itself more known. Because Andres and I just shot Macy's in New York. I had to fly from Hawaii to New York for 24 hours to shoot a Macy's Valentine's campaign. But it was all real couples. They would find a model they like and see what... I mean, Andres is also a model, but a lot of times it would be a model bringing their partner to set.
Yeah.
So now it's like, if you wanted... Like, I feel like the fantasy of dating a model is now diminishing because you now have to be wrangled into their projects. And I don't know how appealing that is for everybody.
But even 10 years later, I think even in campaigns, like there is this expectation that when a couple is being shown and they're same sex, that it's a real couple. Yeah. And that expectation does not exist for straight couples, which I find interesting. Still, yeah.
You're right, because what was it, about 7 years ago, I was still living in Brooklyn, and you were seeing all of these ads like couples. And their big thing is that it was actual real couples. And it's like, great, I'll do it everywhere.
Right. But, the other layer to all of that is I really wanted the images to be very dreamlike, and I wanted them to have the same caliber of a Tiffany's campaign, of a Ritz-Carlton campaign. And for that to happen, models or people that were really beautiful was important to help sell this idea. I was really using the tools that, were available, that were selling a hotel campaign, to sell the idea that same-sex romance is beautiful. And
it had to match the current format that was the conversation at the time.
Yeah. So, I think part of the drive was to fill a void and have LGBTQ plus people see the imagery and see something they've never seen before. But I think almost more of a driving force was for the general public to see an image that showcased gay romance and have their first thought be, that is beautiful. And, then all of their preconceived notions of like disgust or whatever.
Did someone really, how dare you?
What do you mean?
You mentioned earlier when people, for not using real couples or whatever it was, someone said, how dare you? Have you actually gotten that kind of like high horsey response given the current climate at the time?
There was a decent amount of backlash that all had the same theme. I think the most how dare you response, which I found comical, was someone in the Buzzfeed comments wrote in all caps, Braden Summers, you did not use any Asians. You are a racist. And I was like, first of all, I think India is technically part of Asia. So I did use Asians, but furthermore,
you reply THERE.
Furthermore,
Right,
there's a certain budget that I had, and I was trying to showcase as wide a range of cultures as possible, and going further into Asia just wasn't possible given
there's a lot of limitations.
Yeah, and I was happy to showcase as many ethnicities, cultures as possible. So as soon as the project did get some notoriety, I did expand the project, and shot in Bali, shot in Hong Kong, and it has nothing to do with racism. It's really just like I can only go so many paces and showcase as many different people as I could with the budget I had.
I mean, there's always going to be reactions in a negative capacity on either side politically, and very often it's someone that just wants a connection and they're not able to get it through a positive means, so they go through a negative one. Were there any challenges in finding moments of intimacy with couples with models that hadn't worked together before? Was there any sort of like a trick or a thing that you could do to get them to be more comfortable?
The vetting process was important to like really make it clear what was happening in these shoots. I remember in India, after reaching out to LGBTQ plus organizations had kind of failed to procure any sort of couple that would work for the campaign, I then resorted to modeling agencies, which, was where I was comfortable historically finding talent just for any project, not necessarily this series. But I remember telling the agencies what the project was in the initial email, and then, finding people that would work together. And for some reason, I just had this weird feeling that they weren't being truthful with the models. I don't remember what kind of triggered that.
Their comfort levels?
Yeah, their comfort levels. And so the day before the shoot,
agencies do that.
I had asked the agent, I said, do they know that this is LGBTQ focused? And they said, no, it's not. And I said, you need to tell them. They can't show up on set and find out on set. And they were both still interested. And, I think the models, I remember just, they showed up and they were pretty uncomfortable on set. This was a shot where I had rented an elephant adorned with like this wedding attire for the elephant. And, wow. There's all these other extras that I had found.
I would have just booked 3 other couples just in case. Like child models, you book like 4-4-year-olds.
Yeah, if I could have, that would
burn through them.
But we shot this 2 hours outside of Mumbai because it's illegal to have elephants on the streets of Mumbai. And that was important for me to have this like really extravagant, iconic image. And my producer and I, we had found this abandoned building. There's like, I think it's abandoned building in construction. So there's rebar everywhere. I'm on the 2nd floor. I wanted to shoot down on the scene. And it's like these storm clouds are rolling in, and my producer's running around trying to find fruit vendors that would participate in the shot. We have onlookers of like 60 plus people that are just surrounding the set.
Start handing them colorful powder to throw.
And then on top of all that, I'm like yelling at the producer, make the elephant turn 30 degrees to the left. And he's like, how do you want me to do that? And then the models just seem so uncomfortable. I'm like, everything is here. Like it hasn't started storming yet. And I just need some sense of intimacy. And, I think of the 300 shots I got, there's, one that ended up being like, they looked the most comfortable and it was usable. So it's my job as a director to make sure that I get what I need. And luckily I got it, but.
This hiring couples that are in a relationship would make such an excellent fight me, because I'm totally arguing against it right now, because one of my favorite clients to work with as a model when I get to do modeling stuff is a bridal client. They make like 1/3 of all wedding dresses. It's very high gloss, high fantasy. They use brides of all body types and ethnicities, but I'm one of their recurring girl accessories. I come back every time they shoot for at least a day to as a groom to be the girl accessory, because I guess I know the word passing is totally outdated, but I pass for a straight guy. Sure. But in conversations with the girls, they feel much more comfortable doing all of these more intimate poses and interactions, knowing that I'm, happily partnered with my man in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the girls they use are still very, very young. So they like working with someone who has a lot of experience in working in intimate capacities and making their scene partner feel safe. Yeah. Just literal things like, hey, can I touch you? Like, I have to touch you. I'm going to touch you. But like, just asking, like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is that all right? They do a lot of that in acting classes now in the warm up. You do like a whole scan of your body and you tell people what level of comfort you have with touching, whether it's like a soft touch, a squeeze, or even like a bone touch. Like you have to specify all of those things now. But the last time I got to shoot them, they hired Andres too as the other groom. Okay. So we were both in tuxes looking like we were about to get married, and then like we just split off to our brides. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on context. Because if I had a real, I shot many real couples for this series. They weren't all pretend, but my job is so much easier when they are.
This is also just a catalog.
Yeah, no,
this is not a billboard campaign anywhere where they're trying to showcase real stories. They just want like a cute boy smiling out of focus in the background, holding the hand, or just. It's one of my favorite jobs to do because the pressure is not on me to do much of anything other than to just have a nice time. Like it's the girl that has to look great. I just have to be in love and just look at her like this all day. Mm-hmm. It's like the sidekick role where you don't have to learn in any lines. You just like interject with a joke here and there, but you get to steal all the laughs. Dream role.
Yeah, right.
So back to your creative process. Your images are known for visually striking compositions. Where do you even start? Because I don't think I would ever be able to capture a picture like this. I feel like the planning that goes into your shots takes so much time. What is the first part of the process for you? Can you walk us through kind of the beginning to end of the next shoot you have coming up?
Yeah. So, it's ongoing. I visit art galleries very regularly. My husband is a creative director. So he also loves to go visit and see art. He used to work at MoMA. That's how I got my first job. He worked at the Natural History Museum. He's just been a museum guy all his life. And so, inspiration is constantly like brewing, I would say, just viewing other art that I'm inspired by. And then, when it comes time for a new shoot or, new creative brief, I start with a mood board. So I've got, my mood board shows the subjects that I'm going to be working with. I look through, I've got a whole book of inspiration that I've compiled. I'm also constantly saving things in folders on Instagram of like, oh, I like this makeup. I like this color palette. So I found the color palette I think will work best with that particular creative brief. And then I'm finding inspiration swipe for the makeup, the hair, the wardrobe, and depending on how much detail I want to get into, even posing sometimes just for models so they really can get a sense of what kind of look and feel that I want.
It's like a whole lookbook.
Yeah, it's a whole lookbook. And the more preparation I do, I think for me the images are in my head, and I'm not acting as a documentary photographer for the most part. Mm-hmm. I do have some jobs that do require that type of thinking more.
So you don't do weddings?
I don't do weddings. No, no. So there's a vision in my head, and for a successful shoot, I want the final product to look as close to the vision in my head as possible. And how am I going to get the crew and the talent and everyone to be on board? It's with a mood board.
Very clear communication.
Very clear communication, so they know what to expect and kind of what to get out. And then
it's a very directorial approach rather than just photographer.
Right. And then once you're on set, that's when you can play and mix it up and let's try new ideas. But let's try to at least aim for the shot in my head, and sometimes the magic happens outside of that. But I think more often than not, when I'm happy with a shoot, it's because I've communicated really well what I want in advance.
It sounds like you prepare for even a test shoot the way that you would for a full paying job. And of course, with the test shoot, you get full creative control. Have there been moments on paid jobs with high-end brands, Marriott, anyone you've worked with before, you don't need to say who, that there's been a conflict in your vision and with what the client wants? And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, for sure. I think because there are a million photographers out there that have so many different creative visions, more often than not, I'm being hired because the client wants exactly what I have. And so what I'm going to produce is pretty close to the vision. So I would say, those conflicts don't happen all that often. People are spending money on these campaigns, and campaigns cost a lot more than the average person would assume. And not just because of what I'm getting paid, but just because you're renting out locations and you have to pay.
Well, and also renting an elephant for like your own project versus a corporate project is like a 5 times difference for insurance and whoever else you have to hire and compliance and everything else.
But, so when there's that much money,
usually budget arguments.
There's a lot, there's budget arguments, and that happens up front. But they're like, oh yeah, I want this, and I'm like, well, for this quality, I didn't have to block the London Bridge. It just was like run and gun, me, and I think I had maybe the makeup artist holding a reflector behind me, like walking with me.
So you don't have police coming up to you asking for your permits.
So, you can get away with test shoots without paying a whole lot. But yeah, when there's big money run like behind the shoot, then you have to make sure there's enough pre-production and budget to get what you want. So yeah, to answer your question in terms of conflict, like I do remember I was on a campaign that started off with a lot of trust and a lot of like approaching the shoot with the same way that I would approach a test shoot with the mood boards and everything. And as the campaign went on 2.5 years in, there was less of that. And I just remember running into more conflicts with the creative team of like, you're not getting exactly what I wanted. I'm like, well, it's because we're not approaching it the same way that we did 2.5 years ago.
What direction were they trying to push it towards?
I think in that instance, they just wanted more of like a free-flowing, loose style that necessarily wasn't in my repertoire of imagery. Like maybe at that point, they needed a different photographer.
I know a lot of people that get hired for their work as queer artists, and then when they're in these corporate roles, the direction is always like, no, be more commercial. And it's like, but you hired me. Like hire that, like you're saying, hire that guy if you want that. Is that something you've experienced, or is generally more about just like too many cooks in the kitchen?
I think, in that one instance, it was too many cooks in the kitchen.
A producer who wants to be a director.
Yeah. But I would say almost all my work, 95% of my work is like I'm being hired because I've clearly have a vision, and they're hiring me for that vision to match the creative that they have.
That's great. That's why it's really important to have such a strong voice.
Yeah, but it does become limiting, right? It's like that's why I do need other streams of income, because I do have such a specific vision that it doesn't necessarily.
You ever do like
translate
a fake identity, like a ghostwriter? Try out new concepts.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that.
Seems a little cheesy, right?
I'm not that salesy. I think or gimmicky.
But they don't have to know.
Yeah. I'll hire you for my secretive Instagram account.
I'm no good at it. I am no good at being anything but me, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's probably why I don't work more as an actor. Anyways, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Before we get into a giant fight, is there anything you're working on currently that you would love for this audience to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on these moving portraits for a long time, and there are these character studies of like 1 to 2 minute long films, and they just showcase a wide range of people that I find really beautiful with age differences and ethnic backgrounds, and I would love to continue those. And I have this fantasy of having the Times Square Art Project feature them in Times Square one day. So
you just fill Times Square up with all the portraits?
Yeah, well, they do that with different artists. I think there's like 3 minutes at midnight at every night they feature different artists. So something like that I would love to continue.
You should chat with NewFest, the LGBT film festival in New York City. They get to do some Times Square takeovers every so often, and it's usually a queer photo series collage of some kind. I was able to do it with Andres. That was the one time we were on Times Square together.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what the fantasy is.
Awesome. We like to end every show on a low note with a section called Fight Me. Braden has selected a controversial topic. a side to argue, and whether or not he would like to go first. What have you selected?
Should children have smartphones?
Should children have smartphones? Should they?
Absolutely not.
Would you like to go first or second?
I'm curious what your perspective is, because I think it'll be easy to rebut. So go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. Should children have smartphones? Fight me. First and foremost, who do you think you are? Like telling everybody what to do with their kids just because you're a parent? You're like, oh, look at me, I have kids. You have twins. You need smartphones for your kids more than anybody else. Actually, no, I take that back. Your kid, they're twins. Like you have one to entertain the other. So that is their smartphone, first of all. So you already have a built-in babysitter with your kids. So I think your perspective is a little bit skewed. I would go as far as to say invalidated in some capacities. But I think what the trick would be with smartphones is like no social media, for sure. I definitely agree there should be limits. You should just have like an education-only smartphone, like only Duolingo, only math games, only things like that. And then you can kind of decide what quality each program is, and then you time limit each of them. Your kid's going to grow up antisocial anyways. It's 2024. You might as well have a little bit of a break.
Kids should absolutely not have smartphones. Their brains will rot. I mean, I already find myself doom scrolling so much more often than I would like to admit. And if the kids are doom scrolling, their brains are not developing. They need to be social. They need to be creative. Most importantly, I think they need to be creative. They need to learn how to fill their time. They learn how to, not be bored and oh, fuck.
You're good.
Can I just continue going or?
Whatever you prefer. You can start with a personal attack too, if that's
okay. I think you should have prepared for this.
Have you ever had like your kid turn into a zombie when given a tablet? Like, can you relate any personal horror stories of your kids turning into little maniacs?
No, we only give them iPads when they're on planes.
Okay.
Max, you don't have kids. You may want kids, but you don't have kids right now. So how dare you even present the idea that kids should be on smartphones? Their brains will rot. I mean, my brain is already rotting for the amount of doom scrolling that I do when I'm bored. I don't want my kids to rely on smartphones to fill their boredom. They need to be creative. They need to be using their hands. They need to be, drawing pictures. They need to be building Legos. They need to be doing anything but being on a smartphone. They will spend the rest of their adult life on smartphones or whatever new technology will come out. Google Glass, I don't care. It's gonna happen. So they need X amount of time when they're a child. This is the only time that they are going to be smartphone free. I think it is imperative that they fill their time with anything but a smartphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, are you done? I was scrolling. My bad. I think you have a valid take, and we're going to just have to agree to disagree. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Stuff Every Queer Kid Should Know. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and Jake Wachtel. Additional production by Cass Falding and Chantilly Toison. The episode was recorded by Jason Siegel, Mun Singh, edited by Jesse Trout, and mixed by Mike Fry. Music by Tom Goss. If you like this show, don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe on your preferred channel, or all of them, and give us a 5-star rating. It would be super, super helpful. Thank you so much to all my Patreon subscribers. You are credited in the show notes. Thank you for listening. See you next time.